Tenants in Oakland, California refused to pay their rent for 2.5 years as part of a rent strike, and now they forced their landlord to sell the building to a nonprofit. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting story for you today, and it's going over the fact that tenants in Oakland, California, and in the Bay Area, and pretty much the entire state of California, believe that they have more rights to your property than you do. Okay, so the article I'm going over is about these tenants who had this rent strike against their landlord. Now, I don't think the article actually explains what the rent strike was about, but they were using their power over the landlord, and the fact that the California laws are so anti-landlord, so pro-tenant, that it would allow them to not pay rent for 2.5 years and then force the hand of the landlord to get rid of this property. Okay, it's an absolutely insane story, but this is the kind of thing that is pretty typical in the state of California. It's crazy. Okay, now I did a video about tenant unions, about these tenants who organized. Basically, they got together with all the other tenants in their building so that they could have some sort of negotiation rights with their landlord, right? I believe it's a bunch of garbage, okay? Just another push towards socialism. And, the tenants don't have property rights. That's the main thing you need to remember. Now, if the tenants refuse to pay their rent, guess what? In the states I invest in, that means I can file eviction against them. Okay, that is pretty simple. That's the way it should be. And the eviction process in the states where I invest is relatively fast. Okay, now in a place like California, the tenants cannot pay rent darn near indefinitely and still not be evicted. Okay, so that puts the landlords in a very precarious situation. Now, even though the landlord was forced to sell their property in this story, it still turned out okay for the landlord. And I'll tell you why when I get to the article. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think of these tenant unions? Okay, what do you think of these tenants, all in the same building, getting together, forming a union, and then making demands upon the property owner or the landlord? Okay, I think it's BS. I think it's 100% garbage. And you know what? I just wouldn't want to deal with it at all. Okay, if the tenant is on a month-to-month lease, guess what? If I don't have to renew, I'm not going to renew their lease. You goodbye, move along. I don't care if you're paying your rent on time. Now, in California, with all their good cause, eviction protections, etc., the landlord can't simply allow the lease to expire. Okay, they have to keep that bad tenant in there, those bad tenants who are forming this union and screwing them over in their units. That's insane. Okay. Anyway, this article is coming from ABC7news.com, and it says, Oakland residents win longest rent strike in city's history. Push landlord to sell property. Yeah, and this is an insane story, so let's get into it. After a 6-year battle and almost 2.5 years of not paying rent, the tenants at a 14-unit Oakland building claimed victory over their landlord. Instead of tenants getting evicted, their landlord is no longer involved. Luz Pena, what does this victory mean to you and your neighbors? Maria Montes de Oca. I'm not going to read the Spanish part, but it says, this victory represents that we will be able to live in peace with tranquility. Maria Montes and Jesus Alvarez are some of the tenants who've lived in the building for over 15 years. Alvarez showed ABC7 News his kitchen sink. It hasn't worked for at least 2 years and mold is growing. Then his neighbor's bathroom had a leak. His ceiling paid the price. They claim their landlord refused to make repairs for years. They organized and refused to pay rent. So they're saying that this guy's kitchen sink hasn't worked in 2 years. But earlier they said that no tenants in the building have paid rent in 2.5 years. Okay, so maybe the fact that you're not paying rent has to do with the fact that the landlord is not able to repair the property. Okay, use your brain. What money do you think the landlord is using to make repairs and do maintenance in your property, okay, where you live? It is the rent money. So if you don't pay them rent, they can't get the repairs done. Okay, you are an idiot. Less than a month ago, Oakland's Community Land Trust purchased the 14-unit building for $3.3 million. These tenants made history with one of the longest rent strikes in this Oakland's history, and now the entire building will turn into affordable housing. So yeah, basically the tenants forced the hand of the landlord, forced them to sell to this nonprofit, and then the nonprofit is going to turn this building into permanently affordable housing, supposedly, right? Now, my biggest gripe with this is that, simply put, right, the landlord, the property owner, was left completely out of the discussion. So if it was up to me, right, I would evict every single tenant in that building, and sell it. Or I would go through even worse, right? I would convert the entire building into condos. That's an easy way around rent control. You can, we're going out of the rental business. We're going to, turn this whole building into condos, sell the condos individually, and all of you are out of a home. Why? Because you screwed me over, and I'm doing this out of spite at this point, okay? And I'm going to make my money back. I put hundreds of thousands, if not millions, into this property, and now I got to keep you in here for free for years on end. And yeah, I know some of that time was part of the eviction moratorium. So their rent strike really, it doesn't make much sense to me, because these tenants could not be evicted, if they didn't pay. So that is how they got around, the whole eviction issue. Okay, this is horrible. It's absolutely horrible for the property owners, and it sets a bad precedent, because it tells the landlords in the city, hey, you don't have any rights. But you know what? In Oakland, landlords should have already known this. Okay, they should have already known that the tenants have more rights to your property than you do. We are essentially stabilizing rents where they are at right now, and in some cases lowering them a bit. So they are set at levels set by the city of Oakland, said Steve King, executive director of the Oakland Community Land Trust. The trust currently has 45 properties and says this is a part of a bigger movement to turn private housing into affordable housing. Also, those tenants will be able to purchase their units in the future. The East Bay Rental Housing Association, which represents about 1,600 landlords, says it feels like they are under attack. And they are under attack, okay? Landlords have been under attack in California for, as long back as any of us has been alive, okay? They've been taking away landlords' rights and then, pushing ridiculous, stupid laws such as rent control, good cause eviction, etc. for a long time, okay? And I just wouldn't invest there. I just wouldn't, okay? There's no reason to invest there. Yes, there is magnificent appreciation there. Appreciation that blows away appreciation anywhere else in the country. But if you are unable to, pay your loan, then what good is that appreciation? You're just pulling money out of your pocket and throwing it at the bank and then making this huge loss. Will you even survive to get that appreciation? Who knows? Will your business survive to get the appreciation a few years down the line? Well, if you're paying all the bills for every tenant in a 14-unit building for years on end, well, you might not make it. And I'm pretty sure this landlord here had to sell, otherwise they would have just gone bankrupt. So one of my biggest gripes that I always read about when I read this stuff is they say, hey, we're going to keep this housing affordable forever. Okay? Well, simply put, one of the biggest issues they have with public housing is that the rents that they take in, right? They still collect some rent from the tenants, right? But they set the rates at an affordable level. The problem is that affordable level does not even cover, the maintenance and the expenses to maintain that building. So that is why a lot of public housing, declines in quality, starts falling apart very, very quickly. So in the case of a nonprofit, the only way that they'll be able to keep this property maintained is if they get constant additional income from the government. So essentially, they are, getting cash from the government in order to keep this place running and keep it affordable. And that's socialism. That's pure socialism, plain and simple. This is ridiculous, okay? Nobody has a right to live anywhere, no matter what they think. I need an affordable place in Oakland because what? You know, if you can't afford to live there, you don't have a right to live there. Okay, no more than I have a right to move to a $20 million mansion in Beverly Hills. Okay, if you can't afford the rent, the market rate rents, you don't get to live there. That's just the way it works. But anyway, doesn't surprise me any of this stuff that's involved, right? But then I'm going to skip down a little bit in this article because there is one interesting fact, right? And this landlord might have turned out okay. So it says here, ABC7 contacted the former landlord and hasn't heard back. According to Zillow, he purchased the building for $717,000. Okay, so the landlord purchased this building for $717,000 6 years ago, right? And just sold to this nonprofit for $3.3 million. So obviously that is, more than a 4 times what they purchased the property for. Now, I don't know what their expenses were over the last 6 years, but the tenants didn't start their rent strike until 2.5 years ago. So at least for the first, 3.5 years, they had some sort of income coming in until now. And now, the last 2.5 years, they've just been suffering loss after loss after loss. But keeping in mind the purchase price of this property, they might still have come ahead. Okay, and that is just due to the outrageous appreciation they get within the Bay Area. But interesting article. I just wanted to bring this up and let you know the nonsense that's going on in California.